Okay, for this first demo, we're gonna take a 5-inch piece of fabric and a 4.5-inch piece of elastic, and we're gonna stretch this in as if we're doing a leg opening. So firstly, we're going to just pin it to the very top of this, and then I'm going to stitch it so it's going to be held at the very end, and then we will turn, fold it, and top stitch it. So here we're going to cut a pin. I'm sewing this with black thread so that you get a better vision of the outcome. So we're going to do 2 layers of self, which would be equivalent to 1 self and 1 lining. So I have a bit of a raw edge, so we're going to clean that up after I stitch this together. So at the very top is just where you anchor it, and then you're going to ease this into the leg opening or the armhole. So center this about and center this directly on top of the elastic. And then we're going to hold this, support it. I'm going to put another pin here so it doesn't shift while I'm sewing it in here. Okay, so we're going to just anchor this with the 3-step zigzag. And I've set the width of the needle positions in the center. The tension is about a 4. I'm going to set this 4 inches, and then the needle width and the length, which is the SPI stitches per inch. I'm putting this at 3.5. So 3.5, 3.5 for tension and needle position in the center of the machine. So I have set also the, I've set the stitch to the 3-step zigzag on this machine, which is one of their decorative stitches. As you can see, if I collapse this, it will bunch up. I'm going to hold the back of this to keep it from catching and curling. So here, as you can see, it's very stretchy and forgiving. It won't crack. I did this very long, it's almost like a basting stitch that we're going to put on the underside. If you have a machine at school, you're going to narrow this very edge to the elastic, and then you're going to turn it. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and trim this. Just trim this right next to the elastic. Okay, so now you know that this isn't going to stop. I have this 1/2 inch excess, which I can trim off. And a little bit at the top. So now we're going to turn this, and your thread will be dyed and matched, so it won't look as dramatically outlandish here, high contrast. Now for the top stitch, I want a closer 3-step zigzag, so I'm going to change the settings on my machine to, the width is still going to be wide, the length is going to be shorter. I'm going to crank it down to 2 for keeping this, and the tension is still okay. It's a little loose, so I'm going to tighten it a little more because I'm shortening the stitch. And then we're going to take it for a drive. So just get ourselves set up, leave a nice end, these 6 inches at the end point before you start stitching, so it doesn't go into the needle and become unthreaded. It has unthreaded itself. Okay, so here we are. I'm going to go from the top. This again gets centered, middle. Start a 1/2 inch forward. That's why we made a little longer piece, so you can trim this off afterwards. And because it's stretching, you're pulling this into the Lycra, you need to hold it down with your fingers. And I recommend just doing a quick little reverse stitch. This is the part you're going to cut off anyway. And then you're going to go ahead So I'm going to go ahead and cut off. I have a really nice, pretty edge stitch. I'm going to cut that part off anyway. And then you can use this on your leg opening and on your armholes. So that's one really pretty decorative stitch that I use in swimwear if I want to have a more feminine silhouette and I want a prettier finish. So on the next side, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stop the camera, and then I'm going to thread for a double needle cover. Just to point out, my bobbin is using the texturized poly fluff yarn, which is a Permacore 160, and so this is the TX24. So this is the bobbin thread that is very hard to snap and break. It has almost a kind of a yarn-like texture rather than the shiny texture from thread. So again, this is such an important part of our sewing our swimwear. So now we're going to just go to the next stitch.